Hello, it's me, Valerie Monroe, and me, Bookwormy, and we are out here on this beautiful day. So happy to read with you. We're getting close to the end of the book called Journey to Nagwanis. Can you believe what happened yesterday? Yesterday, when we were reading, Brogden finally got back to the eagle's nest where Finley's wife and baby had been. At the beginning of the story, he was so excited to let them know that Finley was alive and that the amber rose had been delivered. And then guess what? You want to tell them? Nobody was in the nest. That's right, Bookwormy. Nobody was there. Can't believe it. Let's continue on. Chapter 21. There was nothing else to do, he realized, but head home. Thanks to his new traveling capabilities, remember he just got some wings? It didn't take long to get there. Once he arrived, he lingered at the wooden door of his hut under the stairs for a long time, trying to decide whether to go in or not. His aunts would certainly be sleeping, and he didn't want to startle them. Evidence of Aunt Gladys's preparations for autumn were everywhere. Bundles of twigs were stacked along the side of the hut. The pathway to the door was clear of leaf litter. Bundles of chicory hung on a drying rack. Baskets of chestnuts with spiky nut casings and hazelnuts still in their green shells were on top of a makeshift table. Aunt Gladys was taking a chance on leaving them outside overnight. A squirrel or chipmunk could easily make off with them. But she had strict rules about shelling the nuts, the first one being that it was not done in the hut because it made a mess. She was probably planning to shell them in the next day or so, Brogden thought. A heap of cattails was on the other side of the hut. Guilt stabbed at his heart. His aunts had worked hard to prepare for autumn without his help. Only by surveying the stores of provisions did he realize how long he'd been gone. How often had Aunt Hazel referred to him as the man of the house? And yet, he left them in the lurch when they needed him most. Well, I will make up for it, he vowed. Beginning tomorrow morning, he would pull his weight. He would rise early and pick the late berries. Black chokeberries, bayberries, and cranberries were still all hanging on the branches. He would tell his aunts to take a break and relax while he squeezed them. And then, while he was pouring the juice into mugs, he'd tell them about his adventure. And his aunts would surely not have gathered the fallen crab apples yet. He mentally added this task to his list. He also had to get moving on his hobby box. Aunt Hazel had come up with the idea years ago. The three of them often went stir-crazy during the long winter months, when huge snowdrifts rendered them homebound. There were only so many stories to tell and so many games to play before they grew restless and bored. In an effort to lessen the number of times they got on each other's nerves, each of them planned several projects. They would store their collected materials in the hobby boxes and retreat to separate corners to work on them. Last winter, Brogden had whittled a set of forest animals and taught himself to juggle with stones. Aunt Hazel pressed her collections of flowers and practiced playing a set of panpipes that she had constructed out of reeds. Aunt Gladys's hobbies were much more practical. She collected cattails each year and made new pillows with the seed heads and baskets and floor mats from the leaves and stalks. They also spent hours playing Don't Topple the Tower, which involved pulling out sticks from a large pile one at a time while trying to keep it standing. For the first time that day, Brogden felt something other than the deep disappointment that came from losing the Sasquatch and finding the empty eagle's nest. A glimmer of sweet anticipation had taken root in his heart, and he could feel it growing with thankfulness. He was home. He could barely wait for his aunt's exclamations of happiness and warm, welcoming embraces. Now that he was on the doorstep, he realized that he had no interest in embarking on any more adventures in the near future. Everything and everyone he needed was inside this hut. He sat on the ground and leaned against the door. The wood cradled his back. He exhaled and closed his eyes, imagining the looks on his aunts' faces in the morning. It took no time at all for him to fall asleep. Curling into a tiny ball, he dreamed of presenting the gold nugget to his aunts. We're going to go right on to the next chapter, chapter 22, Consequences. The reunion with his aunts was not nearly as nice as the one Brogden had envisioned. To begin with, Aunt Hazel tripped over him on her way out the door to check the morning temperature. She looked around dazedly after landing on her bum. What in the? She shouted, and then realizing she had stumbled over Brogden, a dark scowl spread across her face. Well, it's about time, young man, she glared. He quickly rose to help her up. She grabbed his extended arm and began a tirade that lasted for so long, Brogden was sure his ears would fall off. Had he any idea how irresponsible it was to disappear without leaving a note? Did he realize the danger in gallivanting all over Lake Mohakmo? Did he have any regard for the fact that it was autumn and they had been counting on him to help with the chores? Her barrage of words stung like a swarm of bees. Then Aunt Gladys steered him inside the hut and sat him down at the table. Banging bowls and cups in front of him to further enunciate her words, she continued to scold and serve him breakfast at the same time. He gobbled up the porridge she set in front of him, so hungry he was unable to answer any of her questions. It was better to just nod and shake his head than speak with his mouth full, which would have angered her even further. Things got even worse when Aunt Hazel, who'd been awakened by Aunt Gladys's yelling, came into the room and fainted at the sight of them. Aunt Hazel had to hold half of a wild onion under Aunt Gladys had to hold half of a wild onion under Aunt Hazel's nostrils until she came around. As soon as Aunt Hazel began to regain consciousness, Aunt Gladys continued her rant. Had he ever stopped to think about the fact that they were elderly women and that their hearts could not withstand the worry that his antics caused? When was he going to start maturing and think before he acted? Sister, interjected Aunt Hazel, Brogden is home, safe and sound. That's what matters. I will handle this, sister, retorted Aunt Gladys. And then turning back to him, she said, Brogden, you are grounded. Grounded? The words squeaked out of his mouth in disbelief. He had never been grounded. You are not allowed off the property, Aunt Gladys stated. Finish your food and then take a nap. I am sure that you did not rest well on the doorstep. When you are rested, you can start working on the chore list. And don't think I haven't noticed that you have sprouted wings. She walked around and stared at them. Don't even think about sneaking outside to use them. And they are not, I repeat, not to be used in the house. Wings. While we were busy preparing for winter, you were off adding wings to your body. Ridiculous. Brogden spooned the remainder of the porridge into his mouth. The delight of the meal was gone, and he found it difficult to swallow. He had a lump in his throat, and his eyes brimmed with tears. You can tell us all about your adventure as we do the chores, Aunt Hazel offered with an encouraging smile. It was an adventure you were on, wasn't it? It must have been, if you have obtained wings. And then she whispered, and I think they are positively brilliant. He nodded. It had been an adventure, all right. However, all adventures must end. And this certainly was the official end of his latest. There was no doubt about that. And that's where we'll stop for today. Brogden is grounded. What does that mean to be grounded? Grounded means you can't go anywhere. You have to stay, usually inside the house or on the property. Have I ever gotten grounded? I don't believe so. But sometimes maybe I think about it when you eat books that you're not supposed to. Ooh. Well, listen, come back tomorrow because we're going to read a little bit more of Journey to Nagwanis, and we hope you'll join us.